morning. I'm so glad you're here. Let's go ahead and get started. This is section 2.1, the start to unit 2, and this is about expressions. Okay, so example 1, we have each employee gets a $500 bonus. Find the employee's salary plus bonus. So plus would mean add, right? So we'd have that initial 2,800. Oops, sorry, 28,000. There's an extra zero there. There we go. Plus that $500, we would end up with $28,500. For the next one, we would have 32,500 plus that 500. And what would we have there? That would go to 33,000. And now we have this D, so D dollars. So that means it's our variable, it's our unknown. So whatever D was, we would just do D for whatever it is plus that 500. Okay, and we don't have to worry about it equals Y or equals X or something because that would be an equation and we're just looking at expressions. So equations have an equal sign, expressions don't. In parts A and B, we had the equals just because we were simplifying it. Okay, so it's still an expression. And now we're going to go ahead and evaluate that expression, D plus $500, for 3 different values. So the first one is $40,000. So where you see the D, let me change colors here. I'm going to grab a green. So where you see the D, that's where I'm going to put in $40,000. So instead of D, I'm going to write 40,000. And then I have that plus 500. Plus $500. So that's this part. So all we did was sub in the 40,000 where we saw the D. And now we can go ahead and simplify. And we get 40,500. Go ahead and hit pause and try the next 2 on your own and come back when you're ready. Okay, and I'll work on it too. Hit pause. All right, so how'd you do? For part B, I got 5,000. Oops, no, I didn't. I don't know why I keep missing the extra zero. There we go. So 50,500 plus the 500 is 51,000. And then the 62,000 plus 500 is 62,500. All right, very good. Let's keep going here. So for this part, I have a blank can represent a quantity that can vary. So what do you think that is? That's a variable. In an expression, a variable it's a placeholder for a number. And here I have let A and B be numbers, so that means that they're 2 different numbers. Then the product, what does product mean? Remember, product means multiply, okay, or times. So then the product of A and B is, and we have lots of different ways we can write it. The most common way is you just put those 2 variables right next to each other. That means multiply, okay? Or if it's appropriate and if you need to show it, don't put a little X, you can put a little dot, okay? So that little dot is multiply. One thing you'll see quite a bit is if something is in parentheses, that also means multiply. So you might see A times the B in parentheses. And not as common, but still technically true that A could be in parentheses. And we call A and B, since we're multiplying and getting a product, they're called factors. So we don't want to use X for multiply anymore. And the quotient, what do you think that is? Whenever we talk about multiply, What's the other thing that's usually like the opposite? Dividing, right? So the quotient of A and B is A divided by B, where, and when we put B, does not equal 0, because we can't divide by 0. Okay, so quotient is A divided by B, and we know that we can't divide by 0. Okay, example 3, we have let X be the number of hot dogs. Translate, a hot dog stand sells hot dogs for $2 each into a mathematical expression, and then evaluate for 3 different values. Okay, so let's work on the expression first. And this is going to look kind of silly. It's going to look like a lot of work, but over the course of the quarter and through Math 90, if you continue on to Math 90, we'll make this little table to help us generate expressions and equations. So let me jot that down. We're going to have, if I have X equals, I'm just going to make up some random things, okay? I'm just going to say, like, what if X for our hot dogs, what if it's 4? What would we do in this case to find out how much it would cost? So the hot dogs sells for $2 each, so that's going to be a 2. And then do you think I do plus, minus, multiply, divide? 2 times, right? Because I want 2 times, I'm going to put a little dot, the 4 hot dogs. How much would it cost me? $8, right? What if I did 20? I'd have my $2 for every one. 2 times 20 would give me 40. Say if I had 12, I'm just making up random numbers. 2 times 12 would give me 24. And now, hopefully you can see what is staying the same here in this middle block. Let me outline it here. What in here is staying the same is that every single time we did a 2 times something, and that something was our X, right? So that was a part that was varying. So 2 times X, or we could just write it as 2X. So now we figured out the pattern. We saw that 2 stayed the same times the variable. Our expression for this problem is 2x. Okay, that's our answer. It says then evaluate for these 3 things. So if I have x equals 3, I'll just plug in 2 times x. I'll go ahead and write it. 2 times 3 equals $6. We want to make sure we label that. If we had x equals 5, our expression is 2x. So wherever we see the x, we put a 5. We would end up with $10. And then it also says for x equals n. So another variable. So if we have 2x, everywhere we see an x, we put an n. It would just be 2n. All right, moving on. Example 4. Let n be the number of people that rent a house together with equal share of the $1,200 rent. Use a table to help find an expression that describes each person's share of the rent. Then, evaluate your expression for n equals 5, and what does the result mean? Okay, so I'm going to start this off and have you finish it. The share of the rent. So if we want to figure out what portion, would it make more sense to add, subtract, multiply, or divide? Subtraction would technically work, but it's a little bit quicker if we just go ahead and divide, right? So like 1,200 shared among 4 people would go 1,200 divided by 4, we would get our answer, right? So let's go ahead and do that here in our table. And we're actually going to write it all out. It's going to look like a lot of extra writing, but it's so we can identify that pattern. So we have 1,200 divided by the 1 person would equal 1,200. 1,200 divided by 2 people, what would that be? 600. Okay, now I want you to hit pause. I want you to finish off the table. So do 3, 4, and n. And then once you have the n, I want you to plug in n equals 5 and tell me what you got. Okay, so hit pause, come back when you're ready. All right, so how'd you do? For 3, I got 400. 4, I got 300. My expression ended up being 1200 divided by n because I noticed that 1200 was staying constant. It was always there. And then I always did divided by. And then that next number was my n. Okay, so that was the n that I put in. So my expression ended up being 1200 divided by n. And when I plugged in 5, I have 1200 divided by 5 equals 240. And then finally it says, what does this result mean? And what it means is that each person will pay $240 a month in rent. Okay, if your work's kind of scattered, work on making it this vertical layout. Okay, because that looks very nice. We want to make sure we're still doing good habits. All right, this next part here. Other words for all these different things. There's a lot of them, okay? So go ahead and hit pause and see how many of them you can come up with. And then I'll put down some of the most popular ones that I've had from students in the past, okay? So think of other words for addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. So I'll kind of start you off like addition. You could also say, let's do all of addition together, okay? You could say sum. You know, like if they say find the sum of 3 and 5, that means add, which add is another one, right? So we have sum, add, plus. You could say more, maybe increased. Like if they say the temperature increased by 2 degrees, that would mean that you would add 2. Sometimes they'll say in like the total. Let's see, what else have I had in the past? I think positive. That one's not as common, but we'll put it in there in case if you're thinking of it too. I think that's a pretty good list. So see what you can do with subtraction, multiplication, and division. Okay, and then, so hit pause, come back when you have a pretty good list. I would say maybe try to come up with like at least 2 or 3. The more, the better. I ended up with 5 for subtraction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for multiplication, and 3 for division. All right, see you when you're ready. All right, so for subtraction, difference, minus, less, subtract, decrease. I think all those are pretty clear. Multiplication is product, multiply, times. Twice, this is probably one you didn't come up with. But later on today, we'll be doing things like it might say make an expression for twice the number. So what that would look like is 2x, so twice the number. So that's why I put in twice. Or you might even see it with a fraction like 1/3. So like 1/3 of a number would mean to go ahead and multiply. And then we have division would be divide, quotient, or ratio. So remember that ratio is just a fraction that means divide. All right, so now we're going to use those words to translate these phrases into expressions, and then we're going to evaluate for x equals 8. So these are confusing a little bit at first, but we just want to go slow. Okay, so let's take it easy. Let's do these together. So we have the number plus 4. I'm going to circle these different parts to try to help it not be too confusing. So the number, that would mean the variable, right? So the number plus means what? Plus add, right? Plus that 4. So that's our expression, is x plus 4. And then off to the side, if we were to plug in x equals 8, what would I have? That 8 plus the 4, I'm just going to write it way over here, would be a 12. Go ahead and try, let's see. How about just try to get through E? So try B, C, D, and E together. Okay, so give it a try. Even if you make mistakes, if you aren't quite sure what you're doing, that's okay. It means that you're learning. Okay, so hit pause, come back when you're ready. Okay, so I'm going to go and still try to do my color coding here. So I'm going to have 8 minus, means subtraction, minus, we have the number, so the number is the variable. So 8 minus x, so 8 minus the number is 8 minus x. And if I plug in 8 for x, 8 minus 8, I get 0. Now I have the quotient. Quotient means divide. So the quotient of the number and 2. So of the number, you can pick whatever variable you want. I'm just going with x. The number and 2. So x divided by 2 is the expression we would write for the quotient of the number and 2. So if I plugged in 8 for x, I would have 8 divided by 2, I would get 4. Next one, add, so let's get our expression here, add, so it'd be plus 6 and the number. So that would be 6 plus x. Do you think I would accept x plus 6? I would in this case, because the answer would still be the same. You would still be adding 6 and the number. It would just be the number and 6. So I'm not super picky on that one. On the next one, though, I will be, because it would be different. So if I plug in my 8, 6 plus 8, I get 14. Or if you did x plus 6, you would have also gotten 14. Okay, so for E, we have subtract, which is minus. And it says subtract 5 from the number. So where do you think the 5 is going to go? Do you think we're going to start with the 5, or do you think the 5 is going to be at the end of the expression? The 5 is at the end because we want to subtract 5 from that number. So whatever the number is, we want to subtract 5 from it. Okay, so if I said that the number was 20 and we had to subtract 5 from the number, it would be 20 minus 5, that would be 15, okay? Remember, we're doing x equals 8. So if we put in 8 minus 5, we get 3. All right, hopefully these aren't too bad. I know they're weird. They're weird at first. They are kind of hard. Go ahead and try the rest of those. Try F through J. So hit pause, give those a try. Come back when you're ready. All right, how'd you do? So we left off with F. So I did 15 more than the number, and I got 15 plus X. You could have also had X plus 15. That would be the same, and got 23. The product of 7 and the number I wrote as 7X and got 56. There's a few different options. You might have put something different. Remember, there were some different things. We don't want to use X, though, because that would look really confusing for times. So we had 7, little x for times X. That would not be good. So some other options I'll jot in here. You might have done a 7 little dot X. That would work. Technically, you could have put in the X first. You could have done X times 7. That would still be the product of 7 and the number. Or you might have put one of them in parentheses. Any of these would work. Okay, so they all say the exact same thing, and all of them would give you the answer of 56. There's probably a few more. So if you got something different and you weren't sure if it worked, just let me know and I can go back and check it for you. For H, difference means subtraction, so the difference of the number and 7. Remember, difference with subtraction order does matter. With subtraction and division order matters. And in these ones where they say the difference of something and something, you just put it in that order. So because it says the number and 7, you would do X minus 7. You wouldn't want to do like the other one where it said subtract 5 from the number. Okay, so that would be different. And when I did that, I got X minus 7, which equals 1 when we plug in that 8. For I have 16 divided by the number. So 16 divided by X is 2 when you plug in 8. And finally, multiply the number by 5. I just went with X times 5. And when I plugged in 8, I got 40. And again, J is just like G, how there's lots of different options. So you might just put them right next to each other in any order, or put the dot in between, or you might have put one in parentheses. Okay. We're getting close. I think we're down to just one more page, okay? For this last page, I think, let me double check. Yeah, we're on this last page here. So we're almost there. So now we're going to do the reverse, which there's going to be so many different answers. And if you really aren't sure if the one that you picked works, just run it by me and I can go ahead and check in, okay? So now we have this X divided by 2. There's lots of different ways to write this out. I typically just go with the fewest amount of words because I don't really want to write a lot. Okay, so I see that X, and when I see that X, I'm just going to write the number. And then divided by 2. And that's the simplest way I can think to write that one. Of course, there would be lots of different options, but I like that one. What do you think about B? Let's just do the same thing. Let's just go with 6 divided by the number. Done. Cool. For C, 7. Lots of different words for subtraction, right? So you could, so many different options. I'm just going to go with minus for no particular reason. 7 minus the number. What do you think about that next one? I'm just going to go with the number minus 2. For E, yeah, this one's going to have a ton of different options, right? Like, a lot of times I see 5 more than the number, or increase the number by 5. Those are probably the most common besides the one I'm going to go with. I'm just going to go with the number plus 5. And then I'm going to go with 4 plus the number. If you want to hit pause and try the rest of these, you can. They're probably going to be different, though, what we come up with, okay? So let's go ahead and just do that. Let's have you hit pause. Try a G through, looks like an L. hit pause, give those a try. Know that we're probably going to come up with different things, but they'll probably still work, okay? So go ahead and hit pause, come back when you're ready. All right, how'd you do? Actually, I don't remember where we left off. I know there's quite a few of them I left you with. Let's just go back to E. Doesn't hurt to go back to it, right? Since it's on the screen. So x plus 5, the number plus 5. I'm pretty sure we did that one because I kind of remember saying 5 more than the number would be another good option. For F, 4 plus the number. Or again, you could say 4 more than the number. Or lots of different options, right? For G, the product of 9 and the number. Or you might have said like 9 times the number. That one's a popular one. We have x times 5, so the product of the number and 5. Or you might have just written out what I said out loud of x times 5. That would have worked. X minus 7. I went with the difference of the number and 7. You could have done x minus 7, x subtract 7, 7 less than the number. All those are very good. X plus 3, I went with the number plus 3. X times 2, I went with the product of the number and 2. And then finally, x divided by 5, I went with the number divided by 5. All right, hopefully those are okay. We just have one tiny little part left, and then we're out of here for the day. Okay, so I have evaluate the expression for x equals 6 and y equals 3. And I have 3 different expressions. I have x plus y times x, and x divided by y. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to kind of color code this here. So hopefully make it easier to follow along. I don't know where my pen went. There it is. All right, so I'm going to go with x equals 6. So wherever I see the x, I'm going to put a 6. Okay, so here I have an x. So instead of x, I'm going to put 6. And then, so I'm going to write equals. Then there's the plus. And then I have y. So instead of y, I'm going to write 3. So x plus y, when x is 6 and y is 3, is 6 plus 3, which equals 9. Okay, go ahead and try to do the next two. See how you do. Okay, hit pause, press play when you're ready. Okay, so for B, we had y times x. Y is 3, x is 6. So we did 3 times 6 equals 18. And finally, for the last one, x divided by y equals, the x was 6, so 6 divided by the y is 3. 6 divided by 3 equals 2. All right, that wraps up today. I hope you have a